small daily actions compound into massive results over time, yet most people underestimate the power of what can happen when they simply commit to doing the little things consistently. It is easy to dismiss a small effort because it does not immediately show a dramatic change. Saving $1 feels like nothing when bills are piling up. Reading 10 pages feels like nothing when there are thousands of books you could learn from. Doing 20 push-ups feels like nothing when you are far from your fitness goals. But what the majority fail to realize is that the greatest transformations are built not on giant leaps, but on tiny steps repeated over and over until they become unstoppable momentum. Think of the farmer who plants seeds in the soil. On the first day, he sees nothing. On the second day, still nothing. Weeks may pass before the first sprout even appears. Yet he continues to water, to nurture, to protect the soil from weeds. Why? Because he understands that growth happens beneath the surface, long before it appears above the ground. The same is true in life. Your small daily actions may not give you instant results, but beneath the surface, they are compounding, building strength, creating roots, preparing for a harvest that will eventually come if you do not stop. When you look at people who have achieved extraordinary things, you often notice that they didn't necessarily do extraordinary things every single day. They did ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. A writer writes a page a day, and years later, they have written a masterpiece. An investor saves and invests a little bit every month, and decades later, they are financially free. An athlete trains a few hours every day, and after years of effort, they stand on the podium. None of this is magic, none of it is overnight, and none of it is beyond your reach. It is simply the effect of compounding. Compounding is the secret that turns effort into results, but it requires patience. It is like rolling a snowball down a hill. At first, it is small and slow, almost meaningless. But as it continues rolling, it grows larger and gains momentum. Eventually, it becomes unstoppable. The same thing happens with your habits, your discipline, and your small actions. The problem is that most people quit before the snowball has a chance to grow. They want instant gratification, and when they don't see immediate results, they abandon the very actions that would have led to their breakthrough. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Anyone can get excited for a week, pour energy into a new goal, and then give up when life gets difficult. But those who understand the power of compounding know that it is not about doing everything at once. It is about doing something every day, a little progress. Each day becomes a lot of progress over time. 1 extra hour of study every night makes you an expert. In a few years, 1 act of kindness every day transforms relationships. 1 small act of discipline each morning builds character and confidence. The truth is, your limits are not fixed. They are stretched or broken by what you repeatedly do. You cannot climb a mountain in 1 jump, but you can take 1 step at a time until you reach the top. The miracle of compounding works silently, invisibly, and then suddenly it shows itself. Your body changes, your mind sharpens, your finances grow, your influence expands, all because of small daily actions that compounded into something far beyond what you could imagine when you first began. Consistency, not intensity, creates lasting change, because intensity is often temporary, while consistency builds permanence. Many people start their journey with a burst of excitement, driven by a sudden wave of motivation. They push hard for a few days or even a few weeks, believing that intensity alone will carry them to success. But motivation is fleeting, and when it fades, so does their commitment. The gym enthusiast who trains 7 days in a row only to quit on the 8th, the entrepreneur who works endlessly for a short period but burns out, the student who studies all night before an exam but ignores the habit of daily learning. All of them rely on intensity, and intensity without consistency cannot, real progress is built on showing up again and again, whether you feel like it or not. It is not about how much you do in one day. It is about what you repeat over time. Doing 100 push-ups in a single day and then stopping does this for your health than doing 10 push-ups every day for months. Writing one long essay in one sitting does less for your .4 skill than writing a few paragraphs each day for a year. Reading one entire book in one night does less for 𝐂𝐸𝐷 your wisdom than reading 10 minutes every day for a lifetime. The world is filled with people who start fast but finish nowhere because they mistake intensity for progress when in reality, progress is measured in consistency. Think about the way a river shapes a canyon. It does not crash through with one single surge of water. Instead, it flows with patience and persistence day after day, year after year, until solid rock gives way. The power lies not in intensity, but in persistence. You may be capable of extraordinary effort in short bursts, but it is the steady stream of consistent action that creates lasting change. Consistency transforms because it rewires habits, and habits dictate who you become. The problem with relying on intensity is that it requires a high level of energy, and energy is not always available. Life is unpredictable, moods fluctuate, and motivation comes and goes. If your progress depends on intensity, you will stall the moment life throws a challenge your way. But consistency is different. It does not ask for perfection. It asks for repetition. It asks you to show up on good days and on bad days, to commit to the process even when the results are not visible. Over time, consistency lowers resistance, making the task easier, more natural, and eventually automatic. When you are inconsistent, the small things you do turn into habits, and habits build your character. Success is not built on a single act of greatness. It is built on the repetition of small disciplines. The athlete who stretches every morning, the leader who reads every day, the business person who reviews their finances each week, the parent who invests time daily with their children. These are the people who create lasting change because their actions accumulate and shape their future. Insanity can start the fire, but only consistency keeps it burning. In truth, anyone can be intense for a short while, but few can be consistent for the long run. That is why the rewards of consistency are so rare and so valuable. When you commit to steady, repeated effort, you set yourself apart from the masses who rely only on excitement. The difference between temporary results and lasting transformation lies in your ability to keep showing up with consistency, because intensity may give you a spark, but only consistency will keep the flame alive.
Discipline sustains you when motivation fades because motivation is an emotion, and emotions are unstable. Some days you wake up with energy and drive, ready to conquer the world. Other days you wake up tired, distracted, or discouraged, and on those days motivation alone will not carry you forward. If your progress depends only on how motivated you feel, you will quit the moment your feelings shift. Discipline, however, is different. Discipline is a decision you make long before the moment of choice arrives. Discipline is the inner agreement that you will act according to your commitments, not your moods. Think about the difference between someone who waits for motivation and someone who relies on discipline. A person who depends on motivation goes to the gym only when they feel inspired, reads only when the mood strikes, works hard only when the excitement is fresh. But the person who relies on discipline shows up no matter what. They go to the gym when it's raining, they read when they're tired, they work even when the reward seems distant. That steady pattern of action builds habits, and habits build results. Discipline becomes the bridge between intention and accomplishment. The truth is that life will not always be convenient. You will face setbacks, disappointments, and days where everything seems to be working against you. Discipline is what allows you to push forward anyway. It whispers, do it because you said you would. Discipline is not about feelings, it is about standards. It is holding yourself accountable to the promises you made to yourself long after the excitement of making those promises has worn off. Without discipline, even the greatest dream fades into frustration. With discipline, even the smallest action becomes meaningful because it keeps you moving forward. When you study the lives of those who achieve greatness, you see that they all rely on discipline more than motivation. An athlete trains before sunrise, not because they feel like it every morning, but because they are disciplined. A musician practices scales daily, even when it feels monotonous, because discipline shapes mastery. An entrepreneur studies, plans, and adjusts when others are sleeping because discipline demands persistence. Motivation might have sparked their journey, but discipline carried them across the finish line. Discipline also builds resilience. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself despite difficulty, you strengthen your self-belief. You prove to yourself that you can rely on you. That kind of self-trust is invaluable because it gives you confidence in moments of doubt. When life tests you, you no longer wonder if you can keep going. You know you can, because you have trained yourself through discipline. Discipline removes the question mark from your efforts and replaces it with certainty. Many people wait for the perfect mood or the perfect moment to act, but those who rely on discipline understand that there is no perfect time. The perfect time is now, and the action you take in this moment is the action that shapes your future. Discipline does not look for excuses. It looks for execution. It does not negotiate with laziness. It confronts it. It does not delay. It decides. The beauty of discipline is that it creates freedom. At first, discipline may feel restrictive because it demands consistency and effort. But over time, discipline frees you from the chaos of procrastination, from the pain of regret, and from the weight of unfulfilled potential. Now, discipline is the steady hand that keeps you on course when the winds of life change direction, and it is the one quality that ensures progress continues long after motivation has disappeared. Repetition turns weakness into strength and mastery, because what you do again and again slowly reshapes who you are and what you are capable of. No one begins as an expert. No one begins as the strongest, fastest, or most skilled. Every master you admire once started as a beginner, fumbling through mistakes, lacking confidence, and struggling with tasks that would one day become effortless. The difference between those who stay weak and those who grow strong is the willingness to repeat the process until what once felt impossible becomes natural. Repetition is the silent teacher that sharpens skill, builds endurance, and transforms hesitation into confidence. Think of a musician practicing. Scales on an instrument. At first, the fingers are stiff, the notes uneven, the rhythm clumsy. But with repetition, the muscles adapt, the ear tunes itself, and the music begins to flow. Think of a speaker who trembles the first time they speak before an audience. The voice shakes, the mind goes blank, and fear dominates the stage. Yet after repeating the act dozens of times, the fear diminishes, the words flow, and confidence replaces doubt. Every weakness, no matter how intimidating it feels, is softened by repetition until it becomes strength. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity removes fear. The reason many people stop short of their potential is because they expect mastery without practice. They want the reward without the routine, the breakthrough without the repetition, but life does not work that way. Skills are built through doing, not through wishing. Every time you repeat an action, even if you fail, you are teaching your mind and body to adapt. Failure in repetition is not wasted effort. It is part of the process that chisels weakness away. The mind learns through patterns. The body adapts through repetition. The nervous system wires itself around what you repeatedly do until it becomes automatic. This is why habits are so powerful, because your repeated actions eventually turn into second nature. At first, repetition feels hard, but as time passes, it feels natural, and eventually it becomes effortless. That is the transformation from weakness to strength. The first time you lift a weight, it feels heavy. The 100th time, it feels manageable. The 1000th time, it feels light. The weight did not change. You did. Repetition also teaches patience. In a world addicted to quick results, repetition forces you to slow down and focus on process over outcome. It reminds you that progress is often invisible in the short term, but undeniable in the long term. A tree does not grow tall overnight, but with each day of sunlight and water, its roots dig deeper and its trunk grows stronger. In the same way, your consistent repetition builds a foundation beneath the surface long before the results are visible to others. The truth is, mastery is nothing more than a series of repetitions done with intention. The sculptor carves again and again until the figure emerges. The athlete drills the same movement until it becomes instinct. The writer composes sentence after sentence until their voice develops. Every repetition is a brick, and each brick laid over time builds the structure of mastery. Weakness only exists when repetition is absent. What feels difficult today will feel easier tomorrow if you repeat it. What feels impossible now will one day feel natural if you refuse to quit. Repetition takes what is fragile and makes it strong. It takes what is uncertain and makes it certain. It takes what is ordinary and makes it extraordinary. Limits are broken through persistence, not single efforts, because one attempt is rarely enough to overcome the barriers that life places in your path. The world does not reward a single burst of energy. It rewards the determination to keep moving forward when progress is slow, when doors are closed, and when obstacles stand tall. Persistence is the quality that keeps you in the game long enough for opportunities to reveal themselves. Many people give up too quickly, thinking that a failure means the end, when in reality it is only a test to see how badly they want what they say they want. One attempt might bring rejection, another attempt might bring disappointment, but persistence ensures that eventually one attempt brings success. Every great story of achievement is a story of persistence. The inventor who tries hundreds of times before finally finding the solution, the athlete who practices day after day despite defeat, the entrepreneur who faces setback after setback yet continues to rebuild. These are not stories of single efforts, they are stories of relentless persistence. Obstacles that once seemed immovable begin to weaken in the face of repeated effort. A wall that will not break with one strike begins to crack after the 100th strike, and eventually it collapses. The power was never in the single effort, it was in the persistence of striking again and again until the wall gave way. Persistence builds resilience because every time you push through difficulty, you train yourself to endure more. Limits are not physical most of the time, they are mental. They are the stories you tell yourself about what you cannot do, what is too hard, or what is beyond your reach. Persistence rewrites those stories. It tells you that setbacks are not the end, they are part of the process. It reminds you that rejection is not failure, it is feedback. It strengthens your ability to endure hardship without giving up, and endurance is what allows you to break limits. One of the most powerful aspects of persistence is that it changes who you become. Each time you choose to persist instead of quitting, you build character. You create a mindset that refuses to settle for less than what is possible. Even when the outcome is delayed, persistence ensures that you are always moving closer, always learning, always adapting. The persistence itself becomes a victory because it proves that you are not controlled by circumstances, but by your commitment to keep going. Many people make the mistake of believing that limits are absolute. They think, I tried once and failed, so it must not be for me. But those who persist understand that failure is not final unless you quit. They see every failed attempt as a step toward eventual success. They realize that each time they persist, they gain more experience, more insight, and more strength. Limits bend under the pressure of persistence, and eventually they break. Persistence also compounds over time. The longer you stay in pursuit of a goal, the more resources, knowledge, and opportunities you attract. Doors that were closed at the beginning may open later simply because you refuse to leave. People who doubted you at first may begin to respect you because you endured. Circumstances that once seemed impossible may shift in your favor simply because you remained in motion. None of this is available to the person who quits after a single effort. Breaking limits is rarely about dramatic breakthroughs. More often, it is about the quiet determination to persist day after day. Despite the lack of visible progress, despite the discomfort, despite the setbacks, persistence is what transforms the impossible into the possible, because it refuses to accept defeat as permanent, and in that refusal lies the strength to rise above every limit that once held you back. Every day you show up, you raise the ceiling of your potential because potential is not fixed, it is elastic, and it expands with effort, discipline, and consistency. Most people look at their abilities as if they are permanently set, as if they can only achieve so much and no more. But the truth is, every time you take action, every time you repeat a discipline, every time you stay committed, you stretch that ceiling a little higher. What once felt like the limit slowly becomes the starting point, and what once intimidated you becomes routine. Showing up daily is how you discover that you are capable of far more than you ever believed. At first, the ceiling seems low because you have not tested it. You do one push up and it feels like the most you can do. You speak in front of 5 people and your nerves make it feel like the maximum you can handle. You write 1 page and it feels exhausting. But the act of showing up again the next day and the day after that begins to change the story. The 1 push up becomes 5, the small audience becomes a larger one, the single page becomes a chapter. The ceiling that once limited you no longer exists because you kept showing up long enough to raise it. Consistency in showing up builds capacity. Just as muscles grow through repeated stress and recovery, your potential grows through repeated action and persistence. You cannot expect to uncover your highest abilities if you only test them occasionally. It is the daily showing up that creates resilience, strengthens focus, and increases endurance. The mind and body adapt to the demands placed on them, and by showing up every day, you teach yourself to handle more, to reach higher, to believe bigger. Every day you show up, you also prove something important to yourself. You prove that you are reliable. Many people set goals, make promises, and then abandon them when it gets hard. But when you show up daily, even in small ways, you send yourself a powerful message: I can be counted on. That inner trust builds confidence, and confidence raises the ceiling of what you believe is possible for you. Your potential is not just about skill, it is also about belief, and belief is strengthened every time you keep showing up despite difficulty. Showing up daily also allows for compounding growth. Skills improve incrementally, knowledge expands gradually, and strength builds quietly. You may not see the growth each day, but over months and years, the results are undeniable. The pianist who practices daily may not notice progress in a week, but in a year, they play with ease. The entrepreneur who shows up every day to work on their craft may not see massive change in a month, but in a decade, they have built an empire. None of this would happen if they waited for the perfect time to act. Their ceiling was raised because they showed up consistently, turning small daily actions into extraordinary long-term results. Life rewards those who keep showing up because showing up separates you from the majority. Most people quit when they are tired, when they are discouraged, or when they don't see immediate results. But every day you decide to show up, you outlast them, and persistence always beats talent that refuses to endure. Over time, the habit of showing up creates opportunities that would never have appeared if you stayed still. Each day becomes another chance to learn, to improve, to stretch beyond yesterday's limit. The person you are today is the result of the days you chose to show up in the past, and the person you will become tomorrow depends on the days you choose to show up in the future. Potential is not something you discover once, it is something you expand daily by your actions. And every day you commit to showing up, you push that ceiling higher, creating more space for growth, more capacity for achievement, and more possibility for your life. Success is not the product of luck or chance. It is the outcome of deliberate choices repeated with discipline and persistence. Consistency is the key that unlocks doors others believe are sealed. It is the quiet power that transforms weakness into strength, effort into mastery, and dreams into reality. The limits you see in your life are not permanent walls. They are only temporary ceilings waiting to be broken by your willingness to keep showing up. Every small action, every repeated discipline, every moment of persistence raises the level of what is possible for you. The message is simple but powerful. Stay consistent, and there will be no limit strong enough to hold you back.